The first thing that told me my wife was sleeping with another man was not lipstick on a collar, a receipt from a motel, or some glowing text preview that flashed across her phone at midnight. It was a gap in a schedule so small that nobody else in the world would have cared, except I was an auditor by trade, and patterns were the only religion I had ever trusted. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Sue told me, she spent 1 to 3 in the den packing orders for her online store, printing labels, sealing boxes, and lining them by the door for the carrier pickup. For 6 years, that explanation had fit the shape of our life so neatly that I never looked twice. Then one Thursday in March, I got home early because a client in Center City pushed a meeting, and I found the den spotless, the label printer cold, and 3 empty shipping boxes set out like props for a play that had already ended. I stood in that doorway with my laptop bag still hanging from my shoulder, looking at those empty boxes, and felt something shift deep in my chest. Not pain exactly, not even fear, just the quiet click of a lock turning somewhere I had never noticed before. Before I tell you how that lock opened, subscribe to Reddit Ride for more stories where silence cuts deeper than shouting. Sue came in from the kitchen carrying iced tea like she had been in the house all afternoon, smiling that warm, practiced smile that made delivery drivers flirt and old women at church tell me I was lucky. She was 38, pretty in a way that read as kind before it read as beautiful, with soft eyes, a quick laugh, and the kind of voice that made people answer personal questions without realizing they had done it. When we met, I thought that warmth was the safest thing I had ever seen. 6 years later, standing in the doorway of our den in Cherry Hill, I realized warmth could cover a lot of rot if it stayed evenly spread. "You got home early," she said, and kissed me on the cheek before I could answer. Her skin was cool from outside air. That detail sat in my head without explanation. I looked past her into the kitchen and saw her purse on the island, her keys beside it, and the reusable post office tote she usually took on mailing days tucked halfway under a stool. The tote had a faint line of road dust across the bottom. "Client canceled," I said. "How many orders went out today?" She did not miss a beat. 8, maybe 9, she said. I had one customs form that almost made me lose my mind. The answer came too quickly, and that mattered more to me than the content. Honest people usually look toward memory before they spoke. Liars look toward performance. I set my laptop on the counter and nodded, because that was what husbands did when their wives described a boring part of the day. Then I walked to the mudroom and checked the porch camera on my phone. At 12:41, her car backed out of the driveway. At 2:06, it returned. At 2:09, she came through the side door carrying nothing. I watched the clip twice, then put my phone face down. That evening, I asked normal questions in a normal voice. I asked whether the new candle stock had arrived, whether she still wanted to have the Martins and the Parkers over next Saturday, whether we needed more wine. She answered easily while sautéing shallots and talking about a supplier problem in Ohio. She touched my wrist once when she laughed. She leaned her hip against mine while reaching for sea salt. She looked like my wife in every visible way. After dinner, when she went upstairs to shower, I opened her shipping software on the family desktop in the den. That was not hard. Sue used one password for almost everything because she hated being inconvenienced by security, and she had once joked that if a hacker wanted access to our grocery coupons and lavender inventory sheets, he deserved whatever treasure he found. There were only 3 labels printed that day. None had been scanned by the carrier. 2 were for customers who had ordered the week before. 1 was canceled 20 minutes after creation. I sat in the desk chair, hands flat on my knees, and listened to the water running upstairs. My first instinct was not anger. It was accounting. My mind started balancing columns on its own. Claimed task against actual task. Reported timeline against observed timeline. Explanation against evidence. That instinct had made me good at work. It had also, I realized later, delayed the moment when I let myself feel what I already knew. I checked the last month. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, there were gaps. Lots of them. Labels printed late. Orders marked complete before packaging. Inventory logs updated from mobile instead of desktop. Multiple 1 to 2 hour periods when store activity went dark, even though those were supposedly her busiest fulfillment windows. The pattern was not perfect, but it was steady enough to make my stomach turn. When she came downstairs in one of my old college shirts and asked whether I wanted tea, I said yes, because saying yes bought me time. That night I did not sleep much. Sue curled against me around 2 in the morning and breathed softly into my shoulder, and I lay there staring into the dark, thinking about timestamps. When you love someone, betrayal does not arrive as one clean blade. It arrives as 100 tiny revisions to memory. Her late grocery runs, her changed shower schedule, the way she had started leaving her phone screen down, even when nobody else was in the room. The Tuesdays when she had said the post office line was ridiculous. The Thursdays when she came home smelling faintly like hotel soap, instead of our detergent and vanilla hand lotion. By Friday afternoon, I had done something I had never done in our marriage. I had started an evidence folder. I called it Taxes 2024 because habit dies hard. Inside it, I saved screen recordings from the porch camera, shipping logs, and a spreadsheet with dates, time ranges, and notes. I did not know what I would do with it. I only knew that once doubt becomes measurable, a man like me stops trusting hope. On Monday, I worked from home and watched the network dashboard from my laptop while Sue moved around downstairs. We had a decent mesh Wi-Fi system because her store needed stable connections for live inventory uploads, and I had set it up myself last year when our old router started dropping video calls. I knew enough to use the app, not enough to call myself technical, but enough to watch which devices were connected and when. At 12:37, her phone left the network. At 12:44, her SUV left the driveway. At 2:11, both returned. At 2:14, she uploaded 3 tracking numbers from her phone while standing in the kitchen talking to me about pasta salad. I smiled and carried the bowls to the table. That was the moment suspicion became structure. Over the next 9 days, I built it. I never followed her in person, because I did not want adrenaline ruining the precision of what I was finding. Instead, I watched the crumbs careless people leave when they believe the person beside them has already decided to trust forever. She reused passwords. She saved cards in browsers. She left app notifications active. She cleared nothing completely because she believed deleting a visible text thread was the same thing as erasing a fact. It started with her car. Our SUV had driver profiles, and because I handled most of the maintenance, I was the one who got the alerts from the manufacturer app. One Wednesday evening, I noticed a sync notification for a new preferred destination cluster. That language meant nothing to me until I opened the trip log and saw repeated stops near the same block in Mount Laurel and twice near a business hotel off Route 70. The route names alone were not enough. The timestamps were always Tuesdays or Thursdays, always between noon and 2:30, always within the exact hole that existed in her shipping records. I zoomed in on the hotel once, then shut the app immediately because the nausea came fast and hot. Later that night, when Sue was folding towels in the laundry room, I went into the garage and searched the center console of her SUV with the kind of calm that only shows up when a man is already in shock. I found loose change, lip balm, an expired insurance card, a receipt for a gas station coffee, and a black leather business card holder tucked inside the side pocket near the passenger seat. It was not mine. The leather was smooth and expensive, the kind of simple thing men buy when they do not want to look like they care about accessories. Inside were 4 cards. Darren Weller, Regional Sales Consultant, Event Equipment and Hospitality Services. The logo was clean, understated, and local. On the inside flap, in silver pen, someone had written a room number once and then rubbed at it hard enough to leave a blurred metallic ghost. I held that card holder in my hand and understood, all at once, why I had been feeling the way I had. My body had known before my mind agreed to translate it. That little black case was too intimate to be random and too misplaced to be innocent. Behind it, zipped into the pocket of her post office tote, I found a small velvet bag. Inside were steel handcuffs. Not toy store plastic, not something from a Halloween costume box, just cold metal cuffs with a tiny pair of keys looped on a chain. I stood there for a long time, staring at them in my palm, feeling 40 years old and 1,000 years tired. People think the worst part of betrayal is graphic discovery. It was not, at least not for me. The worst part was the cheapness, the insult of realizing your marriage had been sharing space with props. That whatever she had done, wherever she had gone, she had carried home little pieces of it and stored them beside packing tape and grocery coupons and tire pressure receipts. I put everything back exactly where I found it. Then I went inside and helped her plate dinner. That is the part people never believe when I tell this story. They assume there was a slammed cabinet, a shaking question, some crack in my voice that made the liar pause. There was none of that. Betrayal had not made me dramatic. It had made me disciplined. The next breadcrumb came from her email trash. Again, she used one password for too many things, and again, she trusted deletion more than she should have. I searched by hotel name first and found nothing. Then I searched by Route 70 and found a loyalty program email with points updated in the subject line. Deleted but still present. She had not booked the room. That was the revealing part. The email thanked her for a stay attached to a registered accompanying guest profile, which was not language I knew until that week and did not want to know ever again. The primary guest name was partially hidden, but the last name was not. Weller. I stared at those 6 letters until they blurred. Then I searched further back. There were more. Not dozens, which would have been almost easier to frame as madness, but enough. 9 months of points updates. 3 digital check-in confirmations, accidentally forwarded to trash. A dinner reservation, linked through a hotel concierge service. 1 receipt from a restaurant in Moorestown, where Sue had told me she was having lunch with a supplier. The affair was not new. That was the middle blow, the one that sank deeper because it rewrote the timeline of my life. I had been late to it. While I was congratulating us on surviving the ordinary wear of marriage, while I was refinishing the guest room and comparing mortgage rates and talking about maybe taking a week in Maine that fall, she had been dividing herself with professional efficiency. I kept digging. My firm had trained me to think like this. Once fraud exists, assume the visible instance is not the full scope. I checked bank statements. Nothing obvious. Sue had been careful with direct payments. Then I checked our rewards points, gift card redemptions, and the card she used for business expenses, attached to the store. There it was, buried where someone assumed a spouse would never bother looking. Regular purchases from a hotel bar, a restaurant that offered private booths, and a boutique liquor shop near the same block in Mount Laurel. She had hidden the affair inside operational noise. That almost impressed me. What finally broke whatever was left of my denial was not a hotel email or the card holder or even the handcuffs. It was a voice memo. Sue sometimes recorded packaging notes while driving, little reminders about SKUs and reorder quantities. They auto-backed up to our shared family cloud, because years ago I had set it that way so she would not lose business info if her phone died. Most were exactly what they should have been. One was not. It had no title, just a date. I opened it because the file length was 11 seconds, and curiosity had become a reflex. There was a rustle, a car door, Sue laughing softly, and then a man's voice saying, "Next Thursday again, same room." Her answer came low and easy. If Ed stays predictable, yes. There are noises the body makes when it realizes the life it trusts has been observing it from above like a mark. I made one of those noises alone in my den, a sound I hope never to hear from myself again. Predictable. That was the word that stayed. Not husband. Not poor Ed. Not a lie about love. Predictable. I closed the file, pressed both hands against my face, and sat there until the screen dimmed. For the first time since this started, I let myself think of her with him in a real place, with real walls and real clocks, and all the ordinary details that make infidelity less cinematic and more disgusting. I thought of her checking the time because I would be in a spreadsheet or on an audit call. I thought of him asking about next Thursday, the way people ask about a haircut appointment. I thought of the stupid black card holder and the cold steel handcuffs, and my own name turned into a scheduling condition. That night Sue asked why I seemed quiet. I told her quarter end was ugly. She touched my shoulder and said she knew I carried too much. I almost laughed. Instead, I kissed her forehead and said I would be fine. A lawyer saw me that Friday. I chose one in Haddonfield recommended by a partner at work, and I went at 11:30 wearing the same navy suit I wore to client meetings because I did not want this part of my life to look unusual from the outside. Her office smelled faintly of lemon polish and legal pads. She was efficient, direct, and blessedly uninterested in turning my pain into theater. "Do you want to save it?" she asked. "Or do you want to understand your options before she knows that you know?" That was the first truly useful question anyone had asked me. I looked at the folder in my lap and realized I already had my answer. "I want to leave with the right papers," I said. So we worked. Division of assets, occupancy options, temporary account protections, recommended documentation. She told me what mattered legally, what mattered emotionally, and where men in my position often made mistakes because they wanted one final honest conversation with a person who had stopped being honest a long time ago. When I left, I had separation papers drafted for review and a checklist for the next 10 days. I followed it with the same numb discipline I brought to audits. I opened a new account. I changed beneficiaries where appropriate. I copied financial records. I photographed the business card holder and the handcuffs because proof is proof, even when it feels humiliating to preserve. I did not touch Sue's devices again after I had enough. I no longer needed more. More would only have fed a wound that was already mortally clear. The only thing I changed in our visible life was this. I insisted we keep the dinner party the following Saturday. Sue had been excited about it for weeks because several local friends were coming. Along with one couple she hoped might help promote her store through a neighborhood spring showcase. She thought of the dinner as a small social investment. I thought of it as architecture, not public humiliation, not revenge, just architecture. I wanted witnesses nearby, not because I planned to expose her to a room, but because she was less likely to rewrite reality in the middle of a house full of people. Liars love isolation when the script is theirs. I wanted her cornered by the ordinary sounds of our real life. Glasses clinking, oven timer beeping, friends laughing in the next room, while the truth finally stood up in our house. All week she behaved almost tenderly. That was its own cruelty. She asked whether I wanted the blue shirt pressed. She brought me coffee while I reviewed client notes. She leaned over my shoulder one evening and said we should plan something just for us after tax season. Maybe a little inn in Connecticut or a spa place in the Poconos. She said it while smelling like rosemary and clean cotton, and I had to grip the edge of the counter to stop my face from showing anything. There is no pure version of love after betrayal. Even your remaining affection feels contaminated by the knowledge that it has been used against you. I still loved things about her that week. The cadence of her footsteps in the hall, the way she hummed when she plated food, the kindness she showed old men at the hardware store. All of that remained true, and all of it existed beside the rot. That was the hardest lesson. Good qualities do not cancel bad acts. They only make the accounting hurt more. Saturday came warm and bright. Cherry Hill had that early spring look where every yard seems determined to forgive winter in the same afternoon. Sue moved through the house in a pale green dress with her hair pinned loosely at the neck, checking serving trays, tasting sauces, adjusting candles. If you had filmed her from a distance, you would have made a commercial about domestic grace. By 6:30 the Martins were there, then the Parkers, then Nina and Rob from 2 streets over. Sue floated, laughed, poured wine, complimented jackets, and touched my arm twice in front of guests in the practiced shorthand of marriage. I played my role perfectly. I opened bottles. I talked Eagles draft rumors with Rob. I told Nina the halibut smelled better than anything downtown. I smiled when appropriate and never once looked at Sue too long. She relaxed. That mattered. At 7:50, after the main course but before dessert, while everyone was settling into that loose, warm conversation people only have when they think the evening is safely ordinary, I leaned toward Sue and said, "Can you come to the study for a second?" She smiled at me across the table. "Right now, I need your help with something. There was nothing in my tone to alarm anyone else. To them, it sounded like a husband who could not find a serving spoon. Sue rose. I held the study door for her and closed it softly behind us. The room still smelled faintly like printer toner and cedar from the bookshelf polish. On the desk sat a sealed envelope, a thinner black folder, and 2 glasses of water I had set there an hour earlier because preparation had become the only mercy I could offer myself. Sue looked at the desk, then at me. "What is this?" I remember every detail of the next 10 seconds. The tiny pulse at the base of her throat, the distant sound of Nina laughing in the dining room, a spoon touching china, my own left hand perfectly still at my side. I slid the black folder toward her. "This is what I know," I said. "The envelope is what happens next." Her face changed, not all at once but in layers. First confusion, then annoyance, then the quick internal scan of a person checking whether denial still has room. She opened the folder and saw the printed screenshots, the porch camera timestamps, the hotel loyalty emails, the vehicle logs, a photo of Darren Weller's business card holder in her SUV pocket, a photo of the handcuffs in the velvet pouch. For 1 second she stopped breathing. Then she looked up at me and said, "Ed, this is not what you think." That sentence would have destroyed me a month earlier. By then it only bored me. "I know about Mount Laurel," I said. "I know about Route 70. I know about the points profile. I know about Darren Weller. I know this has gone on for months. I know you called me predictable." The blood drained from her face so fast that I thought she might faint. "You listened to my phone. You left your life all over mine." She opened her mouth, closed it, and gripped the edge of the desk. "Please lower your voice," she whispered. That was the moment I understood. She still thought this was a management problem. Not grief, not confession, not the death of a marriage, just containment. "My voice is exactly where I want it," I said. "Our friends are eating dessert 10 feet away, and I am giving you the privacy you never gave me." Her eyes filled, but the tears looked late, like actors rushing on stage after the scene had turned. "It wasn't supposed to become this," she said. That line, more than anything, killed the last soft part of me. Not supposed to become what? A year-long affair. A file. A lawyer. Consequences. Those things do not arrive by weather. They are built. Repeatedly. Carefully. By choice. "How long?" I asked. She pressed her lips together and shook her head. "How long? About a year." I nodded once. "Longer," I said. She looked away. "A little longer." I breathed in through my nose and felt something settle. That was the thing about truth. Once you finally force it into the room, even the ugliest version can be strangely stabilizing. "Did you ever intend to stop?" Her answer took too long. "I thought I could. Did you ever intend to tell me?" She said nothing. Outside the study, someone started coffee. I slid the sealed envelope toward her. "These are separation papers," I said. "My attorney has the full packet. The financial records are copied. I have moved what I am entitled to move. I am not having a negotiation tonight about whether your affair felt meaningful, whether you were lonely, or whether I worked too much. If you need to explain yourself, do it to someone billing by the hour." She stared at the envelope as though it might disappear if she looked hard enough. Then very softly she said, "You are really doing this?" I gave her the only honest answer I had left. "You already did this." That landed. For the first time, she looked less like a caught liar and more like a woman standing at the edge of a collapsed bridge. Her eyes darted toward the door, toward the muffled sounds of people who still believed they were attending a pleasant dinner, and then back to me. "What am I supposed to do right now?" I had thought about that too. "You are going to wash your face," I said. "You are going to come back out. You are going to tell everyone that you have a migraine and need to lie down. I will get coats and finish the evening. Tomorrow you can call your sister, your lawyer, whoever you need. But tonight you do not get to shatter the room because you shattered us." She flinched like I had slapped her. "Maybe words count that way when they are true." "Was there ever anyone else?" I asked. She hesitated. That was answer enough. I closed my eyes for half a second, then opened them again. "Do not say anything," I told her. "Do not add any more damage unless it changes a document." Her shoulders folded then, just slightly, as though some internal scaffolding had finally given way. She took the envelope in both hands. Her nails were still perfect. I remember hating that. Ed, she said, and my name sounded unfamiliar in her mouth. I did love you. I believed she believed that. It did not matter. Maybe, I said, but you never protected me. She cried then, silently and hard, which would have moved me once. I stood still and let the silence do the work I no longer owed her. After a minute, I opened the little drawer in the side table and handed her a clean hand towel, because tissues leave the eyes too raw and I did not want questions yet. The fact that I knew how to preserve her dignity in the middle of my own destruction was the final proof that I had been the adult in our marriage all along. She went upstairs through the back hall. I waited 30 seconds, then returned to the dining room carrying the coffee pot. Sue's chair was empty. "Everything okay?" Nina asked. I poured coffee and kept my voice light. She got hit with a headache out of nowhere. I told her to lie down. There was a round of sympathetic noises, the easy little expressions people make around temporary discomfort. Rob launched into a story about sinus pressure and barometric swings. Nina asked whether Sue needed anything from CVS. I said no, she just needed dark and quiet. The room accepted that explanation because rooms want peace. By 9:30, the house was empty. I stood in the kitchen among plates, wine stems, folded napkins, and the faint aftersmell of roasted garlic and lemon. Sue remained upstairs. I could hear a floorboard once, then nothing. I washed dishes slowly, not because they needed washing that night, but because clean, repetitive motion was the only thing keeping me from smashing every plate we owned. At 10:15, I carried a small overnight bag to the guest room and left it outside the door. "I'm sleeping in here," I said through the wood. "You can take the main bedroom tonight." There was a long pause. Then her voice came through, scraped hollow. "Okay." I did not sleep much, but for the first time in weeks my mind stopped running scenarios. The truth was finally on the table. Paper had replaced speculation. There is a brutal kind of peace in that. The next month moved like weather over broken glass. Lawyers spoke. Accounts divided. Friends learned enough to understand there had been an affair, though not enough to feed themselves on details. Sue moved to a furnished rental in Marlton after 2 weeks. Her sister came with boxes and would not meet my eyes when she carried them out. Darren Weller never appeared at my house, which I respected in a cold, practical way. Men like him prefer the side door and the timed exit. Once the lights come on, they rarely audition for consequences. Sue sent 3 long emails during that month. The first explained. The second apologized. The third remembered. I answered none of them except through counsel. That sounds harsh until you have lived through the way language can be used to pull a wounded person back into a theater they did not buy tickets for. Every explanation was structured to make me participate in her emotional cleanup. I was done volunteering. Summer came. The house grew quieter in stages. First, I noticed how little laundry there was, then how long coffee beans lasted, then how many rooms remained exactly as I left them because nobody else was moving through them making soft adjustments. Some evenings the silence felt like loss. Other evenings it felt like oxygen. I kept the study. I renamed the folder. Not Taxes 2024 anymore. Just closed. Some nights I would sit in there after work with the windows cracked and listen to distant lawnmowers and kids on bikes, and think about how narrowly a life can miss the version of itself it advertises. From the street our marriage had looked polished, busy, reliable, even enviable. We were one of those couples who sent handwritten thank you cards and remembered birthdays, and upgraded the patio furniture at the right time. Underneath that surface, there had been 2 very different contracts in place. Mine had been fidelity, work, patience, future. Hers had been appearance, convenience, compartmentalization, escape. Auditors are trained to identify material misstatement. Marriage should have the same warning label. I did not become a revenge story. I did not expose her online. I did not call customers or friends with lurid details about hotel rooms and silver ink room numbers and the little velvet bag with metal cuffs. I let the law do what it does, and I let absence do the rest. In a strange way, restraint became the only thing that still felt like mine. By October, I had repainted the den. Sue had always wanted it light cream. I chose a darker blue that made the room feel grounded and private. I replaced the office chair, donated half the serving pieces we had picked together, and planted mums along the front walk because fall in South Jersey deserves at least one honest ritual. I started taking slow evening walks without checking my phone every 6 minutes. I slept better. I laughed once at a terrible joke from a junior manager and realized halfway through that the sound coming out of me was real. Before I tell you how this ended, subscribe to Reddit Ride, because stories like this do not end with shouting nearly as often as they end with a man learning how to live in a room that no longer lies to him. The official ending was simple. The papers were signed. The house remained mine. Her store survived as far as I know. We became one of those quiet modern ruins that only show up as a status update, never as a full cautionary tale. People filled in the blanks according to their own appetites, and after a while I stopped caring. The real ending happened on a cold Sunday evening in late November. I was alone in the kitchen making soup, and the windows had just started reflecting the room back at me because the light outside was gone. The pot was simmering. Some jazz station played low from the speaker by the fruit bowl. I had a stack of audit notes on the counter and no urgency to touch them. For no reason I could name, I looked toward the mudroom door where Sue used to come in after her shipping runs, and I waited for the old stab of memory. It did not come. In its place was something quieter and stronger. Space, not loneliness, not triumph, just clean space where confusion used to live. I stood there with the spoon in my hand and realized that the worst thing she had done was not sleeping with another man. It was trying to make me doubt my own perception while she did it. The affair had ended my marriage. The deception had nearly ended my trust in my own mind. Getting that back was the victory, if there was one. So I turned off the stove, carried my bowl to the den I had repainted, and sat beneath the lamplight in the blue room that no longer belonged to both of us. Outside, a car passed and moved on. The house settled around me, with the small familiar sounds old houses make when the temperature drops. For the first time in a long time, nothing in that silence asked me to explain it. The house was honest at last.